What's up, everybody? It's Bodyhead Productions here, and we're starting a new series now that the Mascot Royale is over. And this is just interesting game character backstories. And this is going to be a deep, in-depth character dive into some of the coolest characters in gaming. Today we start with one of the GOATs, Frank Fontaine and his crew as smugglers. Now let's get this right out of the way. Spoilers, my friends. So to start things off, Frank grew up an orphan, and he didn't waste any time in becoming a con man. At a very young age, he ran away from the orphanage and started working at a vaudeville theater. Now, he made some money to get by, but more importantly, this is where Frank learned something he would use forever: how to sway and influence people. He started applying this act, if you will, to other phases of his life. Now, Frank always went by Frank, but had multiple last names, with only one man named Reggie knowing his true identity. Going under the alias of Frank Gorland, Frank started an illegal bookmaking business which he ran in the basement of a drugstore. One crime grind led to another crime grind, and so on. But this also brought a criminal investigation into his bookmaking ring. Knowing he needed another source of income, a legitimate source of income, Frank ripped off a bar owner with a huge interest-based loan. And once the bar owner couldn't pay the interest, Frank ends up owning his bar. You think he'd be content with selling beers and shots, making legal money, but instead he uses the bar as a source of information. People talk a lot in a New York City bar, and Frank started hearing who was betting on who in regards to mafia boxing bets. Now, Frank made a great sum of money betting on fights that were supposed to be thrown, and started living more and more comfortably. Yet when he was most comfortable working at the bar one day, Frank met a man who would change his life forever. Federal Agent Voss walked into Frank's bar and a conversation happened. This officer was on the bookmaking investigation that Frank was directly responsible for, and the officer knew it. He knew Frank to be involved and gave him an ultimatum. Either the feds are going to do a deep background check into Frank Gorland and most likely lock him up, or Frank can do a favor for old Federales Voss. Now, what is that favor? Any news on Andrew Ryan's secret North Atlantic project. Frank had no idea what this was about, and neither did the Fed. But they both knew the bar talked a lot, and some information could come out of it. Everyone knew Andrew Ryan as an incredibly rich man, and Frank saw the possibility for personal gain once again. Here is where the mystery arises. What the hell is Ryan doing out there? To Frank, the feds, and the rest of the world, it was anyone's guess. And then one day, bam, breakthrough. While working at the bar, a drunk woman complained to Frank that her husband died going deep-sea diving for Ryan's project. Now, the details of his death were very hazy and questionable. Frank consoles her and gets a little more information out of her, and through the woman's drunken rambles, two words were revealed: Seaworthy Construction. Now that's Ryan's business's name, and now it was time to infiltrate Ryan's plans. Under the disguise of a federal agent, Frank followed some of Ryan's employees and infiltrated Seaworthy Construction, claiming to arrest everyone if they didn't tell what was going on here. And they sure said all they knew, and Frank's eyes lit wide open. Ryan is constructing an underwater city. This caused Frank to search further. Pretending to be a delivery man this time around, Frank brought canned goods for workers of Seaworthy Construction. And this led to more information. Now, teaming up with his old pal Reggie, the only one who knows his true identity, he ends up shaking down some of the workers for Seaworthy Construction and gains some very important information. The most important bit being that a smuggling operation was being run by a man named Frank Fontaine. Fontaine Fisheries was the business name, and they delivered fish to Seaworthy Construction as a legitimate business. So now there's the connection. That's a potential in to the business. But on the side, the company was really smuggling goods from Cuba to the United States while the embargo was active. Now here's where Frank's Conman career is about to jump off to a whole new level. Still going by Frank Gorland, Frank arranged a meeting with Frank Fontaine of Fontaine's Fisheries, with a plan up his sleeve. The meeting led to Frank Gorland telling the real Fontaine that Agent Voss, the agent who showed up in Frank Gorland's bar, already had a case on him and that a warrant will be served any day for Frank Fontaine's arrest, all based around his smuggling operation. This convinced Fontaine to sell his entire fleet, his business, and without his knowing his name, to Frank Gorland for enough money to hide away in Cuba. Now, Frank Gorland, the orphan turned con man, agreed to meet with the real Frank Fontaine at a dock a couple days later to pay the final sum of money. With no intention of paying, Frank Gorland killed Fontaine, fired the entire crew, and from that day forward became Frank Fontaine. With an existing relationship between Fontaine Fisheries and Andrew Ryan's company, the new Frank Fontaine had his in. He started sending flattering letters to Ryan to try and get on his good side, claiming Ryan was a true genius, a real man of moral and ethics, and that Frank would love to set up a fishery in the underwater utopia Ryan was building. Now, all the while, Frank had nothing on his mind but dollar signs. Andrew Ryan eventually accepts Frank Fontaine's offer and invites him down into his city, even revealing the name, Rapture. Police Chief Sullivan of Rapture picked up the newly named Frank Fontaine and his two main men, Reggie and Peach Wilkins, and they headed down into the abyss with no idea what was waiting for them. Now guys, this is only the start of interesting game characters, and this is only part 1 of Frank Fontaine's story. Part 2 will be out before midnight tonight, so keep an eye out, hit that notification button, because I'm bringing 2 stories a day from here on out, guys. I appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.